The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I'm back from New Hampshire. I will have interviews from voters in New Hampshire that I did last night for you a little bit later today. The big news on the Democratic side, if you haven't heard, Bernie Sanders has won by a lot the second primary election in New Hampshire. Of course, marginally losing by a very small amount in Iowa to Hillary Clinton. And now we have amazing results from New Hampshire to share with you. A significant defeat against Hillary Clinton. We will talk about it in context, but first let's look just at the numbers from yesterday and compare them to the polling numbers that we had going in. Bernie Sanders coming away yesterday with a 60 to about 38 win over Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders besting Hillary Clinton by just under 22 percentage points. Now, how did this compare with the polling going in? Well, the Real Clear Politics average of polls going in had Bernie Sanders at 54% and Hillary Clinton at 41%. So while Bernie Sanders was projected to win New Hampshire by 13 percentage points, he overperformed the polls by 8.3% and coming away with nearly a 22 percentage point victory. In Iowa, Bernie Sanders also overperformed the polls by 4.6%. So what can we take away from this election, Lewis? We can't take away, as I told you yesterday, that Bernie Sanders is going to be the Democratic nominee, because as we know, dating back 50 years, the new winner of the Democratic New Hampshire primary is only the nominee just over 50% of the time. So we can't say that right now. We also can't say that Bernie Sanders is going to come away with a victory in the upcoming primaries in Nevada and South Carolina. What we can say is that in the two primaries we have had so far, caucus and primary in Iowa and New Hampshire respectively, Bernie Sanders' support has been understated by the polls going into the primaries. And that is the most important takeaway, Lewis. As we look now at the polling coming out of Nevada and South Carolina, we have to remember that Bernie Sanders has been getting more support than what the polls have said. And that's a really important thing.
Yes, I guess there's also something to be said about New Hampshire voters, and that is that they seem to not decide who they're voting for until the day of the voting or the day before.
Yeah, a lot of people we talked to saying, I decided today or yesterday, which was interesting. And in spite of that, Bernie Sanders winning handily among just about every group. Let's take a look at the different categories and cross sections where Bernie Sanders did really well yesterday. Bernie Sanders won among both men and women. Bernie Sanders defeated Hillary Clinton among all age groups except those over 65 years of age. Bernie Sanders won among all education groups, going to people who have not even graduated high school to people who have advanced degrees. And Bernie Sanders won among all income groups except those making over $200,000 a year. I cannot forget this key point. In spite of the fact Bernie Sanders trounced Hillary Clinton in yesterday's primary in New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton will reportedly still come away with more delegates because there are 32 total delegates in New Hampshire. 24 of these are pledged delegates based on the results of the primary. There are 8 unpledged superdelegates. And based on those expectations, we expect, Lewis, that Hillary Clinton will still get more delegates out of New Hampshire than Bernie Sanders in spite of losing by 22 percentage points. Maybe the superdelegate system is broken.
Broken. It's as if it ever made sense in the first place.
Right.
I mean, why does it exist? You can tell me historically why it exists, and that's irrelevant today. So we need to do away with it. I mean, I think we probably both agree that we should do away with the electoral college system as well.
There are really strong arguments for doing away with the electoral college, and we've talked about them before, and we will again between now and the eventual general election. New Hampshire primary on the Republican side. Last night, Donald Trump wins handily. Let's take a look at the results from the New Hampshire Republican primary. Donald Trump, 35%. John Kasich in second place at 16%. Ted Cruz in third place with 12%. Jeb Bush in fourth place with 11%. A little energy from Jeb Bush Marco Rubio just behind Jeb Bush with almost the same number of votes, right around 11%, slightly behind Jeb Bush. Chris Christie at 7%, who has announced he is suspending his campaign, effectively dropping out of the race. Carly Fiorina at 4%, and Ben Carson at 2%. So Christie's out. No more Chris Christie. Another one bites the dust. The real question in New Hampshire, how did the results compare to the polling going in? Can we trust the polling in these primaries or can we not? Thinking back to Iowa, you'll remember that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio overperformed the polls, and Donald Trump notably underperformed the polls. Let's look now at yesterday's results versus the polls, and you will see that Donald Trump and John Kasich overperformed the polls, both doing better in the actual voting than they were expected to based on an average of recent polls. Marco Rubio, most notably, and Cruz, Bush, and Rubio very, very slightly, underperformed the polls, but Cruz, Bush, and Christie very, very close to the exact numbers that we were seeing in the polls. So the notable data from the polling versus the results yesterday on the Republican side are that Donald Trump and John Kasich did better than the polls expected, whereas Marco Rubio did noticeably worse. And I think, Lewis, that this is a reflection of Marco Rubio's sort of robotic repetition implosion in the debate that wasn't yet reflected in the polls. There were no polls done that we talked about yesterday after that disastrous debate, but before the election. We could probably attribute his underperforming the polls, at least in part, to that bizarre firmware failure that he had.
Yes, I think that did have an impact, and people will hear later. We did talk to one voter who said that at the last minute she had to switch her vote to Kasich because of that whole malfunction, if you will.
Yeah, and I don't know that we're actually playing that clip. I know we talked to someone who said that, but I don't remember if we are. But trust us, it did happen. Someone did tell us that if we don't play the clip for you. Okay, so what are we going to continue watching on the Republican side? Right now, Donald Trump is noticeably ahead in both Nevada and South Carolina, which are the next two primaries on the Republican side, on both sides actually, albeit in different orders. Will Donald Trump hold this lead? Will Marco Rubio's decline continue to happen? Will Jeb Bush and John Kasich's new energy propel them to something resembling a win, even if not first place, some kind of a win that keeps them in this thing in South Carolina and in Nevada? Do Bush or Kasich have any shot in your mind, Lewis? Are they even in this thing?
Well, I don't know. I would like to think that that this means something for Kasich, but his numbers are still so low. And Bush, I would say certainly not. Kasich, probably not.
All right, Lewis, not bullish on Kasich nor Bush. I'm not either, but to the extent that they can keep this thing going and distract from all of the, or just keep distracting from who is ultimately going to be the attacker of the Democratic candidate, that is good for the eventual Democratic nominee. I want to get to Hatriot Mail early today because I have so much stuff to play for you from New Hampshire last night. This is Hatriot Mail.
It's like taking an apple pie, filling it with pages from the Old Testament, topping it with hollow points, and serving it with a side of homophobia. Hatriot Mail. Written by patriots who hate David Pakman. Because America. And because freedom.
Okay, today I'm going to play a Hatriot Mail for you that is going to just prepare us for the type of thing we can expect about either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, whoever is the eventual Democratic nominee. This is one of those extreme, offensive, disjointed, unhinged critiques of President Obama based on stuff that makes no sense to anybody with a connection to the real world. Let's listen to this and prepare ourselves for the equivalent about either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton sooner than later.
Obama's mother was a porn star. Barack was conceived during an interracial gangbang. Don't believe it? Google image search Obama's mother. Tell me the woman in the 50s porn magazine is not his mother. Look at the teeth. Exact match. How's that for conspiracy theories? ROFL. Don't believe it? Look at the pics and you just might change your mind. One thing is for sure, the images are so spot on, you cannot say for certain that those pics are not Obama's mother. Besides, bring on the hate, bitches.
Lewis, it's amazing how many Hatriots are also experts in dental records.
Yeah, this is a popular theory out there amongst Obama haters.
I've never heard it.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a big one. And I think it's one that they like to cling on to because just of the nature of it.
Certainly a lot of Klingons happening there, no question about it. All right, let's take a break. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. Lewis is on Twitter at lewismotamedy. After the break, video from our interviews with voters in New Hampshire. These are going to be interesting. I think you're going to like them.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show is made possible almost exclusively by viewers and listeners of our show through something we call membership. Take control of your independent media like today's new member of the day, Pamela Wolf, has done. Pamela, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. Join Pamela, get instant access to all the member content, including the world-famous bonus show. It is an extra show we do every single day for our members at davidpakman.com/membership. So we finally made it up to New Hampshire yesterday on the day of the primary. We spoke to Hillary supporters. We spoke to Rubio supporters. I spoke to a fantastic Trump supporter. I'll play that interview later today for you. I want to start with two interviews I did with supporters of Hillary Clinton. And the big thing for me in talking to Hillary supporters, Lewis, was why did they choose Hillary over Bernie? If they are progressive, is Bernie too progressive for them? Are they just confused about who to vote for? And what we very quickly found out was that a lot of people were confused about why they voted for Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders. First is my interview with a woman who says she is just very loyal to Hillary Clinton, but she couldn't really explain on the issues why Hillary is a better choice for her than Bernie Sanders. Let's take a look at that interview first. Was there any particular issue that moved you towards Hillary Clinton?
I'm just very loyal to her. I've been loyal to her for over 8 years now, so I'm very loyal.
Are there particular issues where you disagree with Bernie Sanders?
Not necessarily, but Hillary is who, my loyalty lies, and that's who I was going to vote for from day one.
And why do you feel so loyal to Hillary Clinton?
Hillary Clinton was very helpful to me. I was trying to pass New Hampshire state law and United States federal law in memory of my daughter, and she was somebody who sponsored the law for me, known as Michelle's Law.
And when you thought about your vote today, was there any issue where, in spite of your support for Hillary Clinton, you don't necessarily agree with her?
No, not really.
You agree with her on basically everything?
About everything that she says, yes, I do.
$12 minimum wage instead of $15?
Any minimum wage that goes up is a good thing. Minimum wage, unfortunately, people who make minimum wage, it's just never enough. It's never enough. They still live, a very basic life. They can't afford a lot of things, So what are we going to do? We have to come up with jobs. Is minimum wage even good enough anymore? We have to do something to.
So if it were up to you, you would go with a $15 instead of $12.
I would go with more than that if I could, but it's not my business.
But it wasn't enough to sway you towards Bernie, who supports a $15 minimum wage.
No.
All right, thank you very much. Sort of unusual, right, Lewis? I mean, very clearly loves Hillary, but it's not even really clear that Hillary is the best candidate for her based on actual issues. This is really a concern to me.
Yeah, and I've talked to other people who have the same feelings about Hillary. They just think that she's special for some reason, or they like her on a personal level for one reason or another. And that seems to be their priority when it comes to voting.
Then I spoke to another Hillary Clinton supporter who, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lewis, but he basically came up with Hillary Clinton is nice. I mean, it was unclear whether there was any policy reason whatsoever for his support of Hillary over Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that's what I came away from this one with. He just likes Hillary. She's nice. It's her time. I guess some people think that because she has invested so much time in government and held all these positions, that she just has to be the one. And don't get me wrong, her qualifications are great, but shouldn't it be about policy?
I believe that it should be about policy. Let's take a look at this interview. Any particular issue that really pushed you towards Hillary?
Not really any particular issue. I just believe that, it's her time. It's, she's been trying to do this for a long time. I believe her attitude is, what we need. She is what we need for this country.
What about her attitude, in your mind, makes her what we need?
Just her go-to attitude that she wants to do things. She wants to help us. She wants to help people who want to do stuff. She just wants to help people. She's a very, for the most part, kind-hearted, I guess you should say.
And are there particular people she wants to help in your mind?
That one is a hard question to answer.
What issue, is there a specific political issue you really agree with her on?
With the supporting Planned Parenthood, all that stuff, I believe Planned Parenthood is a good thing in this country. Despite what people may think, it does provide a bunch of women's health services and prevention services and things like that.
And does Bernie Sanders support Planned Parenthood?
I believe so.
So that wasn't a difference maker, right?
That wasn't a difference maker. That's just something that I really like.
What was really the difference maker for you that helped you to choose Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, other than just that she's kind?
I mean, her attitude, she's... I really can't put it into words. I just really, really like her attitude, really just like what she does. And
anything about Bernie Sanders you don't like?
I mean, I couldn't tell you. It's been a long day, I'm kind of tired.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us. Okay, so that was basically every interview with Hillary supporters was like this. I'm sure that there were Hillary supporters who were very focused on the issues, but we certainly had a hard time finding them. And that was a little bit of a concern, particularly in thinking about South Carolina and Nevada in the Democratic side. Then I spoke to a young lady who was exploring all of the Republican candidates. She said she was an independent, but she was really interested in seeing what the different Republican candidates had to offer. Her big thing was jobs. And unfortunately, after this interview, she hates us now. We'll talk about that a little bit. Here's the conversation I had with her about jobs. What are the most important issues for you? Like, aside from the candidates, what issues are really important for you?
Education is a big one for me, and I think the economy as well.
And what about the economy?
I think we need a lot of reform, because right now it kind of seems like it's going downhill and it's just crashing, and I think we just need a lot of reform.
In what ways do you see it going downhill?
People aren't getting jobs, and that's concerning because I'm in college, I'm a freshman, and it scares me to see all these graduates graduating with a degree and all this debt, and they don't have a job.
And did you know unemployment's lower than it has been in 8 years? Did you know that?
Yes, I had heard that. Yeah.
So in what sense is it really hard to find a job right now, given that unemployment is so low?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, we've got the lowest unemployment, below 5% in over 8 years. So right now there seems to be a lot of jobs, right? In what sense do you think it's difficult to find a job?
Unemployment. Okay. It's just, for example, for my brother, he is an international relations graduate, and he couldn't find a job at all. And it's tough because now it seems to be that people don't have room to acquire new job seekers. So I find that the employment workforce has to grow. And
it's more how you feel more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as you can see, Lewis, some confusion about jobs and finding jobs and the unemployment rate. And this is really a concern to me because you have people going out there and making decisions based on a completely 180-degree opposite view of a particular issue, in this case, jobs. This is a voter, right? Eventually she will vote.
Yeah. So it's clear that she really hasn't done her research on the jobs issue, which is unfortunate. And people like Rubio, they'll throw out talking points. They'll scare you. They'll tell you that the economy has been destroyed by Obama. Some people fall for it, right?
Absolutely. And clearly some people have been falling for it, as we experienced in New Hampshire. Then we went to the location of Marco Rubio's watch party. I don't even really know what they call it, but people were hanging around and watching the returns come in. And eventually Marco Rubio showed up and gave a speech. So we had a few different Marco Rubio supporters to talk to. First, I spoke to a Marco Rubio supporter who is concerned about the debt, although she wasn't sure why nor how Marco Rubio would fix the debt, but she really liked his position on it. Let's take a look at that.
I like the idea that he supported the labor force and that he didn't, I agree with free college, for instance, because I thought it was important to go back into the workforce and get those kind of jobs again.
And are there other issues that are important to you as a voter?
Yeah, definitely the economy and foreign relations, especially with the threats of ISIS coming.
And when you think about the economy, like, what do you think about? What really matters to you with the economy?
The national debt, obviously. It's continually rising, so I'm interested in his plan to see how to reduce that.
And how would he reduce it? What's your understanding of how he would reduce it?
I'm not really sure the specifics.
But you know he would.
Yeah.
Okay, then I met a young lady who was voting for the first time. She really liked Marco Rubio because of his position on abortion, even though his position on abortion is effectively the same as all the other Republican candidates. Really, she loved it. Take a look. On what particular issue did you decide that? Or one or two issues, maybe?
I think it was definitely with the pro-life. That's what I really looked most for in a candidate. And then definitely, too, with the border issue as well. That's what I also kind of decided on as well.
And which candidate did you eventually settle on?
I went with Marco Rubio.
And what about his position on the border and his position on abortion? What specifically made you say, that's the guy for me?
You know, I really like him as a person, and I felt like I connected to him on that level. And when I was doing my research yesterday, I just kind of realized, I really like what he believes in, especially with the pro-life. He definitely believes in that and stands on that situation the most.
Now, every one of the Republican candidates is against abortion. So was there something extra about Marco Rubio on that issue?
He's definitely a family man, and he really cares about his family. I think he has like 7 children or something like that, and that really made me like him even more.
And of course, Marco Rubio does not have 7 kids. And then we spoke to a Marco Rubio supporter. This was a very interesting individual, Louis. This was a young guy, a high school senior who, although he was somewhat confused, he really sounded quite reasonable. The confusion I had was why he was voting for a Republican at all. Let's play that piece.
Unfortunately, the system of governing we have today allows that to be the case. Marco's platforms push for an increase in those trade skills, bringing manufacturing back to the United States, which would actually increase job growth, therefore making those with those, lower, no degree at all, actually have the ability to have employment.
So in other words, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if Marco Rubio were to get elected, he would be able to sort of restructure the economy such that having a college degree might not actually get you that great of a job. It would be more the blue-collar workers who would have the better jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's his platform for strengthening the middle class.
And would that make the U.S. competitive internationally to go away from sort of highly educated jobs and back to manufacturing and blue-collar jobs? Is that a good idea?
Well, it isn't a revolution back to blue collar. I mean, it is, just a small step in the right direction. But when you look at economies that are doing well right now, well, maybe not right now, but China. The Chinese economy is largely based on manufacturing, and they are generally thought of as the most successful economy in the world. Not saying that, highly skilled, highly educated people aren't necessary and very, important to our economy, but we need to bring manufacturing and that blue-collar mentality that America used to have back.
Last thing, over the weekend, when Marco Rubio's firmware glitched, as I like to call it, and he repeated the same thing 4 times, how did that impact you?
I'd been such a heart-set Marco Rubio fan for so long that it really didn't affect me.
You could have repeated it 8 times, you would still vote for him, is what you're saying.
I've seen him speak at least 5 times, and every time he's more eloquent than the next. And, I mean, you got to give him some credit. He's on stage. He's got millions of people watching. I'd probably be doing a lot worse up there than he did, so, yeah.
Well, let's dispel with this notion that high school seniors don't know what they're talking about. They know absolutely what they're talking about. Thanks so much. What's your name?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Whitaker Seavey. Nice.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. All right, so he was a really good guy, right, Louis? I mean, we talked to him for a few more minutes than that. It was all a very interesting talking to the Rubio supporters. There were one set, and we had more interviews. We can't play all of them. One set of Marco Rubio supporters seemed to not be totally sure why they were supporting Marco Rubio, but they were. And then another set of Rubio supporters actually sounded like they should be supporting a Democrat. I mean, it was all very confusing last night.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can expect that when you're talking to voters in any case, really. I think people are just generally confused about a lot of things, Democrats and Republicans, really. But perhaps in this election cycle, when it comes to Rubio and especially Donald Trump supporters, there seems to be some confusion.
So next we'll talk to Tom Kochan about the job situation and get some details about that. And then later in the show, I will play one interview with a Trump supporter and another interview that was actually hijacked by a guy who had conspiracy theories about the so-called Zionists. You're not going to want to miss that. Make sure to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by Thomas Kochan, who's professor of work and employment relations at MIT's Sloan School of Management and also co-director of the MIT Institute for Work and Employment Research. He's the author of the book, Shaping the Future of Work. The book is fascinating, and in the book you talk about the reality that we've had sort of trials and tribulations with regard to employment and labor and work forever, for as long as we can remember. But you're particularly concerned now. What do you see as sort of different about the status quo of labor and work that distinguishes today from past issues that there have been?
Well, I think today we're suffering from the effects of 30 years of stagnant wages, where productivity and profitability of business has been growing, but we seem to be losing our ability to improve wages and the standard of living of ordinary workers. So I'm worried particularly about the next generation. We're not creating enough good quality jobs to keep up with changes in technology and to keep up with globalization. So we've got to redouble our efforts to create good jobs so the next generation doesn't have a lower standard of living than we enjoyed.
So there's a few different areas to sort of unpack and explore there. I mean, first of all, as far as you mentioned the increased productivity, but also the concentration of the sort of fruits of that additional productivity not going to sort of the average worker. So is this a sort of a wealth inequality conversation that needs to be had, that increasingly workers are producing more and more, but that it is those at sort of the top of corporations that are the beneficiaries, by and large, of that additional productivity?
Well, David, that's the story that is all over the press, and for good reason, because it's accurate. 60% or more of the wealth created in the last couple of decades has gone to the top 1% of corporate executives or people who own shares of corporation and other capital. So we've got to address this inequality. It's just not sustainable in our country, and we're seeing that in the current political environment, in the campaigns. And yet, the good news is there's lots of things we can do. There are a lot of companies that are competing on the basis of high productivity and high wages and good jobs. There are more CEOs today who are worried about these issues and are listening to ideas for improving their organizations as places to work while still being productive and profitable. Government leaders and politicians are all coming along with their proposals to increase the minimum wage and to get wages moving and to invest in training and to invest in economic growth through infrastructure and so on. All of these are steps in the right direction. We just have to have a national movement to reinforce these ideas and to encourage more innovation and to hold accountable those who are not respecting our workforce today by violating labor laws, beating unions left and right, rather than working with unions as partners. So there are good things happening and a lot more that needs to be done.
I'd love to get your thoughts though on, points taken on all of the good things happening and sort of suggestions and possibilities that you're outlining. There's this sort of broader context that I'd love to get your thoughts on, and we've been doing a number of interviews on this. Technology experts and technology historians have pointed out increasingly in recent years that in the last couple hundred years of sort of human society, anytime there was a significant technological advancement, the number of new jobs that were created by virtue of that technology far exceeded the number of jobs that were destroyed by the creation of that same technology. And a number of technology experts are saying we are now at the point where technology net is destroying jobs, that the job creation due to new technology is going to be far dwarfed by the jobs destroyed by new technology. Is that sort of a broader issue in your mind that goes above and beyond the minimum wage or individual companies taking steps to create jobs?
It's a very important issue. And I'm right in the middle of those 2 points of view. Yes, the historians are right that we have created more jobs through technological change than we have destroyed. And obviously, as we make those transitions, people are hurt. Some people lose jobs, they don't have the skills, they need to be retrained, or somehow we need to have a safety net for them. And then the technologists who study what's going on today are also probably right that we're going to see more jobs destroyed in the future if we just let the status quo continue. If we don't take action to invest in more infrastructure development, if we don't expand our economy, if we don't invest in all the new renewable energy alternatives that are out there and waiting for opportunities for innovation and growth, then we probably will see more displacement in the future than we have in the past. But all of that's under our control. I don't believe for a moment that technology is going to doom us inevitably. We can address these issues, but we've got to take action to train the workforce to address the skill needs of the next generation of manufacturing and innovation in services, to make sure that we prepare the workforce of the future with lifelong learning so they can make the adjustments to changes in technology, and then build the institutions that encourage innovation that is inclusive. That is, we want to really get the next generation of inventors and technological experts to think about how we can address these big problems in society with advances in technology. And by doing so, create new occupations, new jobs, and we will do just fine. But it takes a lot of concerted effort and a shared vision for the future of the economy and a shared vision for the future of technology. Then we will make these adaptations.
Let's drill in a little bit more into the micro and some of the specifics you discuss in the book. I think a lot of people generally understand at least the concept that you can pay higher wages and still be profitable, because oftentimes you have a far lower rate of turnover when you pay higher wages. You have more engaged employees. And a sort of popular example of this is Costco versus Walmart. Costco with a significantly higher average wage, still a very profitable company. So let's first talk about the sort of specifics of that. Do we have examples as to whether the savings in terms of reduced turnover and higher productivity when you pay higher wages really are justified? And what data do we have about whether that sort of general idea that we may all understand, does that actually work in practice?
It works in practice. We have been doing research on this with our students and colleagues around the country for the last 25 years. And you can go in every industry. In airlines, you can identify Southwest and a few other, the old Continental in the 1990s, and increasingly some of the emerging airlines that use high performance strategies that outcompete their counterparts with higher productivity and our ability to pay wages that are industry above industry average. In healthcare, Kaiser Permanente has a partnership with its employees and its unions. It has industry leading wages, and it's one of the leaders in healthcare and healthcare innovation, in improving its revenue and its profitability. and in using advanced medical technologies better than anyone else. In retail, you mentioned Costco. In the Northeast here, we have examples of companies like Roach Brothers, companies like Wegmans, companies like Market Basket that demonstrated to all of us in New England 2 years ago that it revolted when they tried to take away the good company service, good customer service, the low prices, the high productivity, and the good jobs. And they succeeded in convincing the community and convincing their board of directors that they had to keep that business model. So we can find these examples in every industry. The challenge is spreading those to become the norm rather than the exception.
Well, I was
So
going to say,
it is
why wouldn't every business be doing this if it truly saved money, right? I mean, it's not like a secret strategy.
It's not a secret strategy, but there's two ways to make money.
Yeah.
There's the traditional way of treating labor as a cost and minimizing labor costs and keeping everything under control. That's kind of the management paradigm that still is taught in business schools as maximizing shareholder value and don't worry too much about the other stakeholders. Or you can take the Costco or the Southwest or the Market Basket strategy or the Kaiser Permanente strategy and say our responsibilities are not only to return value to the owners of our business, but also to create good jobs. So it's a choice. There's no single best way. Both models can be successful. In some industries, it's harder to be the high road employer than the low road employer because there isn't quite the margin that's available. But in industries from retail to manufacturing to healthcare to others, even in apparel and textile, you can find companies that within the constraints of the reality of the industry, they have better jobs and good performance. But you can also get that good performance in traditional ways. So there's no magical formula that says one is necessarily better for shareholders than the other. It's clear that one is better for both shareholders and employees. And so we need to look to building those kinds of good companies that also provide good jobs. And then we need public policies that are updated to encourage those good companies, good jobs, organizations, and to raise the floor on minimum labor standards of wages and sick leave and family leave and safety and health and labor relations so that we reduce the incentive to be a low road employer and reward those that go for more high road strategies.
Well, there's a great discussion of this in the book, Shaping the Future of Work. We've been speaking with the book's author, Thomas Kochan, professor of work and employment relations at MIT's Sloan School of Management. Very, very interesting. Thanks so much for talking to me about it.
Thank you, David. Keep up the good work.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, back in New Hampshire yesterday, I was in the middle of interviewing a very reasonable John Kasich supporter when a random guy enters the frame and just inserts himself into the shot. So I did what I could and started talking to the guy. Take a look at this. What was the key driver that led you to Kasich instead of any of the other candidates?
He's got a lot of experience. He also had, you get a lot of other candidates to say outrageous things and that kind of boost their poll numbers. But with John Kasich, he had a more solid plan. I really like this idea of increasing defense spending, but focusing a lot more on research and redoing the procurement. That was really useful to me because I'm going into national security as a field, and so that was definitely my biggest issue.
How does that sound to you, sir?
Very good.
All right. If it weren't Kasich, who was your second choice?
Ooh, second choice, probably Chris Christie. Again, because of his strong stance on security. I do wish that a lot of the candidates would focus a lot more, listen to what the president and his generals are saying about climate change and how that is probably one of the biggest threats. But, if you had to vote for, at least on the Republican side, which I was looking for, he'd definitely be my second bet.
I'll tell you, you sound more like a liberal to me. You're making a lot of sense to me. You really, really are. He's making sense, isn't he?
Yes, it is, but he hasn't heard me.
No.
And I wasn't.
Talk to you now.
Okay.
Who did you vote for?
What do you mean, who did I vote for? I voted for me.
You voted for yourself.
I'm running for office, but he doesn't even know me because if you read this, you'll see what I have to offer. I have a lot more to offer than any of them, but I like that person, but I also like Huckabee.
Are you interested in reviewing this gentleman's paperwork?
Sure.
It sounds like he would love to see, but the thing is, he already voted. That's the problem.
Okay, I'm going to create an injunction and stop this whole process because I wasn't given equal time. None of the MSNBC wouldn't give me equal time. The group out front wouldn't give me equal time. Also, the rabbis, wouldn't get equal time.
Well, if anybody, the rabbis should be giving you equal time, I would say.
No, they didn't. The news people didn't give the rabbis equal time.
Well, if anybody, the rabbis should be getting equal time.
Stand next to them 1,000% because the Zionists are screwing up Israel.
See, now that's where we're not going to agree. But let's pause it there here in New Hampshire. 2 voters here. Very, very interesting. Super unusual, right, Lewis? I mean, the guy was, afterwards, he kept saying he was going to have the entire New Hampshire primary redone. And I said, hey, by all means, if you can do it, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, this guy just seems completely crazy. No other way to describe it.
And then my last interview from last night in New Hampshire, I spoke to a Donald Trump supporter, and it was everything we could all imagine it would be. How do you figure out as an independent which primary you want to vote in? How did you decide anyway?
Because I'm sick of the same, what's going on. Both candidates, Bernie and Trump, opened up a sleeping giant here in the country. And we had it with the establishment. We need people that's going to work for us, that care about us. And right now, that's why, politics today, especially today's, look around you. It's amazing what's going on here today.
But how did that get you to the Republican primary today?
How did it get me today?
Yeah, in other words, as an independent, you could have voted in the Democratic or the Republican.
I understand. That was the guy. I'm just sick of the same stuff.
Trump is the guy, you're saying?
Empty promises. Empty promises.
And Donald, so you voted for Trump today?
I voted for Trump because a lot of people don't have to like him, but you have to respect what he's doing. He's paying for his own campaign. I heard he only spent like less than $3 million. And
chump change, right?
Yeah, to him, yeah. But he's a media genius, so he knows how to capitalize. And that's smart thinking. So use that, and if he's going to use that to run in the country, that's very important too as well. I mean, okay. I got invited to see Rubio today, and because I know a gentleman here who's sponsoring him, and I went in. No, I didn't vote for him, but he's a good guy. He's a future. His time is not now. He's a good guy. I respect the guy, but his time is not now. He's the future of the Republicans. If he doesn't do it this term, he might do it the next.
So let's dig in. Broken promises, you said. Yeah. What promises specifically upset you?
Just like with national health care. We should have like some form of national health care, even though I do have health insurance.
But who promised national health care?
Originally, I think it was Bill Clinton initially, way back in the day. I remember him saying that when I was younger. I remember him saying that.
And that got you today to vote for Donald Trump.
I mean, Obamacare is an absolute farce. There's people that don't want to pay it because they can't afford it. And we should have a national health care system like England and Canada. We should.
Do you know which candidate supports that?
Bernie Sanders, I believe.
But you didn't vote for Bernie.
I didn't. But Trump said it. He would do it too, but he never came out with an initial plan. Bernie didn't either. But the fact that they're mentioning it,
Bernie did say he supports Medicare for all. He's put forward a plan for that. Other than health care, what issue got you voting for Trump today?
I think we need leadership in this country. Someone who stands up for strength is very important. Strength, and also just the country lost its respect.
Who doesn't respect the U.S. now?
What's going on? Obviously China. Could I say Russia? I don't know. Putin said he respects Trump. I think because Putin respects leadership and strength. That's how he works. So I think right now, those 2 countries, there's some other countries as well. We need strength in this country. And I like Bernie Sanders too, but I think he's kind of unrealistic with some of his socialism. Only works to certain countries.
Is it realistic?
I don't like the word socialism. I don't like that word, how they use that.
I'm curious, is it realistic to ban Muslims from traveling to the U.S., for example?
No, but that's how Donald Trump talks, okay? But he knows it's certain parts of the region. The problem is, listen, racial profiling, and people want to talk a lot. We're all accused of it. You've discriminated against somebody by the way you look.
I'm accused of racial profiling on an almost daily basis. You should see what goes on with me.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the deal. Does it mean they're bad? No. You have to. But if you know in your heart, if something's wrong, go with your heart and your instincts.
All right.
Sorry, but
a ringing endorsement for Donald Trump here. Thank you. I really appreciate speaking to you. That is all the time I have today. No time for voicemail. On today's bonus show, an 11-year-old murders an 8-year-old over puppies. I will also talk about the Twitter Trust and Safety Council. Will it do anything? What is it supposed to do? And we will discuss biopesticides being used to fight lampreys. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. davidpakman.com/membership. Tomorrow will be a great show, but it doesn't have to end today. Continue on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.